Hey Griffin, I had spoken to you about an exercise that will help you get the 16th note in the bass drum around the 8th note in the hi-hat in the right hand. And so if you already know, I've heard you count through the 16th notes, you got a good handle on that. So we count 4 16th notes to the beat. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and so if we're playing 8th notes, we're only playing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The E's and the U's go in between. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So we're going to play the 8th notes in the right hand, 2 and 4 on the snare drum, and we're going to do a little thing with, I don't know if you know what a permutation is, but a permutation is all the mathematical possibilities of those 4 16th notes. And if you think about it, if you just played 1 16th note on the beat, it would just be a quarter note. If you played trumpet, it would be different because you'd be concerned with the duration. Trumpet player would play da, 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 might even connect them, da. Drum is a short staccato instrument, so all we're concerned about is 1, 2, 3, 4. So if the sheet I'm going to send you, the first exercise in there, they're all 2 beats long. They're actually 1 beat repeated. We play in 4/4 times, so we're going to repeat that measure twice to make 1 measure of 4. So the first one is just 4 quarter notes. The notes up, you play with the stems up, you play with your left hand. With the stems down, you play with your bass drum. So that first 2 beat measure is just going to be, here's the 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Simple enough, just the quarter notes. Then next, as we move over to exercise 2, we're just going to shift over 1 16th note. So instead of playing the beat, the number, we're going to play the one immediately after, which is E, 1 E and 2 E and you might have had, if you took the music classes with Mr. Capaldi, you might have described those 4 16th notes as takadimi. 1 E and takadimi. Same thing. We're going to put the snare drum first on the E. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So when we did the quarter notes, they fell with the hi-hat on the beats. Now the E falls in between those 8th notes in the right hand. We're going to move on now and do the and, the 3rd 16th note, 1 E and. Now and is an 8th note, so it falls with the 8th note here. I mentioned in the introduction to this that you're going to play the backbeat with the snare drum. Don't worry about that. You're going to play the written line with the snare drum. So ands. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and with the bass drum. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. Now we play the 4th 16th note, takadimi. 1 E and anticipates the next beat by 1 16th note. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 and 2 E and Okay, so those are the 4 single 16th note possibilities for each, assuming that we're playing a repetition of each beat exactly the same way. Now we go to groups of 2. So when we play 1E, starting on the beat, 1E, the 1 will be with the 8th note in the right hand. The E will be in the crack, just like it was when we played the E by itself. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Now, because we have 2 notes and 2 sound sources, the snare drum and the bass drum, we can play one of each. And so the first one will be the snare drum first and the bass drum second. Sorry. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a and a and a and a and a and a. Reverse. Put the bass drum first. And a 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 and a. Okay, once you get those first couple of groups where you can put that 16th note in between the 8th notes, then you want to take out the 16th note funk sheet that I sent you. And it looks kind of like the 8th note bass drum exercise, except instead of, there are some 8th notes, but mainly they're 16th notes. So you're still going to play the right hand playing 8th notes on the hi-hat. You're going to play, the pattern that's written includes 2 and 4 on the snare drum. And so the first one is just quarter note on the bass drum on 1, snare drum on 2, bass drum on 3, snare drum on 4. It's just like the 8th note bass drum exercise, line 1. It's written a little differently because the snare drum is part of it. So that one is just simply 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. When you get to line 2, we're introducing a 16th note anticipation to beat 3. So it's kind of set up just like the 8th note bass drum exercise, except it's a 16th note anticipation. 1, 2E and a 3, 4. 1, 2E and a 3, 4. 1, 2E, a 3, 4. 1, 2E, a 3, 4. And you notice that the 16th note, just like with the linear exercise, falls in between the 2 8th notes. 1, 1, 2E, a 3, 4. 1, 2E, a 3, 4. 1, 2, a 3, 4. 1, 2, a 3. The next one, exactly the same, except we move it to the 4th beat, anticipating 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. A 1, 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 1. The third one, or line 4 actually, begins with measure 13, anticipates the 3rd beat and the 1st beat. 1, 2E and a 3, 4E and a 1, 2E and a 3, 4E and a 1. Okay? Now, starting the next series, we're going to anticipate the 2nd beat, anticipate the snare drum. So now it's 1 downbeat on 1 with the bass drum, 4th 16th note between the and the downbeat of 2. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next one anticipates the 4th beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next one, both 1 and 2 and 4 anticipation. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next one now gets a little tricky. We're doing This is the measure that begins, the line that begins at measure 29, starts with 1 E, 2 16th notes with the bass drum, snare drum on 2, anticipating 3, 1 E, 2, a 3, 4, 1 E, 2, a 3, 4. Then, again, we'll keep the first of the 2 notes on beat 1. We'll move it over instead of a 16th note, now an 8th note, so it's now 1 and 2, a 3, 4. Okay, now you get onto the second page. It's more of the same. You should be able to figure out each figure individually, break them down, put them back together. If you have any trouble, I don't know if we see you this summer, then we'll work on this together. If not, maybe we'll pick it up in the fall. But if in the meantime, if we don't work together this summer, but you're confused about that, let me know. I'll help you work out the second page as well. Once you get these all together, the thing about this, the linear sheet, the first one, is that once you've played those 2 pages of that sheet, you've literally played all the possible combinations between your left hand and your bass drum. So then you can improvise and make up whatever kind of, you can take parts off record. That Rodeo Lil Nas X track, if I'm not mistaken, the beat for that is basically so 1 E and a 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then once you're comfortable with that, as I say, you can use it to take parts off records and learn beats from other songs that you like, or just improvise in that groove and get something that might sound like this. So there you go. Good luck with that. I'll be in touch with, I've already sent an email to your mom. We'll see how that all turns out. And if we don't see you this summer, maybe we'll see you in the fall. So hang in there.